If you're like me, you've been on the edge of your seat, waiting for the next glimpse of Captain Marvel. After Disney gave into the patriarchy and didn't allow Carol to take down Thanos single-handedly, even though we all knew she could, I've been eagerly awaiting the next installment of her Shero's journey, and boy have we waited. We went through release dates of July 2022, November 2022, February 2023, July 2023, and now eventually November of this year. Finally! That many pushbacks and reshoots can only mean one thing. It's gonna be awesome! And in celebration of this, Disney dropped the new trailer for The Marvels, which will feature Captain Marvel, Ms. Marvel, and Monica Rambeau. Let's take a quick look and see if it was worth the wait. We start with a shot of the Sabre space station orbiting Earth with Nick Fury. So I guess that Secret Invasion all works out on Disney Plus this summer, so...
Good news, everyone!
He's talking to Captain Rambeau over a comlink, and we see it's Monica from the Scarlet Witch Disney Plus series that you likely didn't watch because it wasn't made for you. Like any good scientist, she sticks her hand into a glowing wall in space and it blows her back. And as she tumbles backwards toward the station, inexplicably slowing down as she goes... Holy Isaac Newton, Batman! We hear something's wrong. When she gets to the window, we see it's none other than Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel herself, from the Disney Plus show you likely also didn't watch because it wasn't made for you either. She flips right in front of Nick Fury like an 80s Garfield window cling doll, and she calls him by name, which is weird because he's, the super spy. He asks where Rambeau went, and we see Monica fly through a jump point onto a moon, I guess, where she's attacked by what looks like the Kree. She goes to use her powers to protect herself, and we hard cut to Captain Marvel slamming through Kamala's bedroom door.
What the?
Exactly. And just as I'm beginning to think, well, at least they're playing Beastie Boys Intergalactic, that's something, it becomes obvious why.
Well, now, don't you tell me to smile!
How about a smile for me, huh?
A smile?
Subtle. So what we've got here is a Freaky Friday situation. Fury and Rambeau seem to figure it out first and show up at Kamala's house where hijinks ensue. Kamala tries to show off her powers and Captain Marvel switches places with her again, slamming through the Khan's dining room table. Cut to Kamala, who was transported to Carol's last position, which looks like a Kree ship, where that cat thing that scratched Nick Fury, in a move that totally didn't ruin the mystery of how he lost that eye when it got brought up in Winter Soldier, eats a couple of Kree soldiers and Kamala freaks out. We see some girl boss moments, what looks like a dance number out of your average Bollywood movie, a whole mess of cats, what looks like a diverse female version of Ronan the Accuser, though she's not blue, and a scene which teases just what a team they'll become. Look, I could go on for a while talking about how this looks like a school bus on fire, but why bother? Has it not become painfully obvious at this point that most of what the MCU is putting out is no longer being made with boys and men in mind? This clearly isn't made for me. Not because I'm older, but because it's made for women and girls. This may as well be one of those Disney Channel musicals. This trailer is aimed at 12-year-old girls and 35-year-old pink-haired, septum-pierced, unhappy women on Twitter. And I can already hear the keyboards getting after it and saying, "But baby, what's so wrong about trying to appeal to girls? Marvel needs to be more equitable and inclusive, you old bigot."
Oh, you were finished? Oh, well, allow me to retort.
Did you have a brain tumor for breakfast?
Yeah, I actually do have a problem with that, and here's why. I sometimes feel like most people have the memory of fruit flies. Think back just a few years ago. Disney was predominantly known as a little girls' entertainment company. I mean, not exclusively, obviously, but mostly. They even went out of their way to cater to and cultivate that audience with their Disney Princess line, remember? It was everywhere, and even made appearances in Wreck-It Ralph. Not one person had an issue that were making content mostly for girls. Disney had the little girl market wrapped up tight, but they were lacking content for boys. Some of the content they'd made was obviously pretty generic and aimed at the whole family, but very few things were aimed at boys the way the princess stuff was at girls. Disney saw this as a problem. So what to do? Well, for starters, they sure as shit didn't consider masculinizing the content that was already bringing in their female audience, that's for sure. So instead, they did what Disney always does. They just bought some. That started in 2006 when they bought Pixar, which gave them Buzz and Woody, Mike and Sully, The Incredibles, and Cars, which came out a few months later. As the father of 2 young boys at that time, I can tell you firsthand we spent a ton on those properties. On New Year's Eve 2009, they bought Marvel Entertainment for $4 billion, which was already riding high with the first few installments of the MCU at that point, and which also included all of the comics. And I hate to break this to you, but comics have always been dominated by a male audience. You don't have to like it, but you need to accept it. From their inception, boys and men drove comic sales, and the characters and stories have always reflected that. It's not sexism, it's capitalism. Companies catered to the audience that bought their products, and in this case, it was male. That's no different than companies which traditionally cater to a more female audience. And like Pixar, I'm not even sure I'd want to total the amount of money, time, and effort we spent as a family on various Marvel content over the years as my boys were growing up. From Iron Man through Endgame, their lives basically revolved around the MCU. And in October 2012, Disney dropped another $4 billion to acquire Lucasfilm, which gave them Star Wars and Indiana Jones, though there would need to be some distribution rights worked out with Paramount for Indy, but that eventually got done. In the course of 3 huge acquisitions, Disney had gone from a company that had girls locked up to one that now had the counterbalance for that with a ton of properties that could be marketed at boys and men. This was really the first time since Disney was big on their live-action adventure and teen movies aimed at boys back in the 50s and 60s that they had specific content for that demographic. And this isn't me saying it, it was the prevailing wisdom at the time of the purchases. So what's happened since then? Well, Disney has seemingly handed it all over in varying degrees to intersectional feminists that have feminized both companies and all the properties. They took properties that were purchased specifically so that they could appeal to a male audience and flipped it all on its head and reimagined it as female. And when men like myself happen to notice this bait and switch and call it out, we get hit with the typical ist and phobe labels. But those nonsense labels don't faze me at all at this point. And the thing is, both Star Wars and Marvel had the ability to bring in more female faces and still cater to the male audience they wanted. Look at it this way. Think of Disney as a politician. During primary season, you need to solidify your base. You gotta lock them up. But come the general election, you may want to try and pivot and pick up some moderates from the middle. But here's the thing, you can't ever pivot so far away that you lose your base. That's what got you there. You can't win without their votes. And in the case of an entertainment company, you can't hope to achieve greater financial gains if you lose a majority of the audience base, which made your franchise valuable in the first damn place. And this isn't just entertainment. We saw a perfect example of this move this past week as Bud Light attempted to torch their own company when they pivoted right off the fucking planet, leaving behind any remnant of the customers that actually bought their shitty beer. This is what Disney has done with both Marvel and Lucasfilm. They took what had a predominantly male audience and decided the best way to make what were already some of the most iconic and valuable franchises in the history of entertainment even more valuable would be to get rid of any competent men and insert women everywhere, both on and off screen. And if any male customers complain, just tell them it wasn't made for them and to shut up and stop being bigots. Also, keep buying their products and tickets, obviously, because otherwise they'll get blamed for the financial failure as well.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
Well, despite the efforts of shill media to try and spin it otherwise, we all know it hasn't paid off. The Star Wars brand may be tarnished beyond repair by this point, and Phase 4 of the MCU, which included some of the biggest failures both in theaters and on their streaming platform, was a disaster. Phase 5 has already started out with a fizzle thanks to the wildly underperforming Quantumania, and other than Guardians 3, things don't exactly look any better coming down the pike. They've largely run off the exact demographic they spent $8 billion to gain, in an effort to cater to a demographic they already had, and the effects have been obvious, whether they'll admit it and change course or not. So, hell yeah, I'm looking forward to this dumpster fire in November. Call it an early Thanksgiving present. It saddens me that they've taken some of my favorite franchises and made them shells of their former selves, because it never had to be this way. You have to actively try and ruin Star Wars and Marvel Comics. I'm admittedly looking forward to Guardians 3, as I have a real soft spot for that group. But after that, since Disney turned its content into a joke, I think it would be bad form of me not to point and laugh. You can join me if you like. Or don't. I'm not the boss of you.